Well, thank you guys all for joining our webinar this month. It's about mitochondrial health and how you can support your health on the cellular level. And today I've got mitochondria expert Justine Stenger on. I've been doing a mentorship with her for the last few months. She's teaching a bunch of functional medicine doctors more about mitochondrial health, how to support our patients, how to help you heal from the inside out. And then we'll go through the Q&A. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So Justine, I was going to go ahead and let you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got into all this.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for being here, and thanks so much for having me, Dr. Engels.
You're welcome.
I got into this field about 13 years ago. I met Dr. Bruce Hoffman, who's a functional medicine doctor, and I started working with his patients nutritionally. And so my background is in nutrition, and from there, my relationship with him and getting kind of my feet wet in the field of functional medicine, I became really, really interested in learning more. So from there, I went and studied functional medicine through the Institute for Functional Medicine, and did all kinds of trainings and things over the years. And I eventually was introduced to phospholipids and fatty acids and membrane medicine. And I was so fascinated by the cell membrane being this kind of brain of the cell, and all of these incredible properties of the cell membrane. And that's what catapulted me into going to study phospholipids and fatty acids. And then from there, largely based on my own health journey as well, I kind of stumbled upon mitochondrial medicine and have now dedicated my training and my education to mitochondrial medicine, and have really been able to incorporate the phospholipid and fatty acid piece into mitochondrial medicine to help support educating doctors so that they can help support you. I do a lot of training on mitochondrial medicine, just encouraging people to move away from, this silo medicine kind of the nutraceutical model, the just add more things and try to force healing. My approach is very different. It's how can we just respect the beautiful, intelligent system that you reside in and give it exactly what it needs to restore health. And that's what I teach, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
Okay, great. Well, I wanted to start with the basics just to cover everything. So, can you explain a little bit about mitochondria and why they're so important for human health?
Yeah, so our mitochondria are little organelles within our cells. So you have about 37 trillion cells, and you have about 200 different cell types, and we have about 500 trillion mitochondria. So depending on the cell type, or depending on the organ, is going to depend on how many or that's going to determine how many mitochondria we have within that cell. So as an example, a brain cell or a neuron is going to have very, very high mitochondrial density, thousands and thousands of these little organelles within each and every cell. And then we have skin cells that are going to have much less mitochondria than our brain cells. We have liver cells that are very, very dense in mitochondria, our heart, very dense in mitochondria. And if you can kind of pick from that out, when you think about the diseases that we see today, we see the leading causes of death coming from, neurological conditions, cardiovascular disease. We have lots of liver disease. And you can see that those are very, very mitochondrial dense. And so when our mitochondria start to fail, because those are the organelles within the cell that make 90% of the energy, that is when we are going to end up with these disease processes. So if you really break down all of the symptoms, all of the diseases that we see today, we could really break them down to all stemming from mitochondrial dysfunction. And of course, there's a very small percentage of diseases and conditions that are true mitochondrial diseases or genetic diseases, excuse me. But most of the conditions that people have and the diseases that manifest are from the mitochondria. So those mitochondria, like I mentioned, are making 90% of your energy. And diseases are really bioenergetic deficiencies at like the very, very root. And so if we have mitochondria that aren't making enough energy for us, we are going to end up with the tissue or the organ or the system that has mitochondria that are not working properly. That's where we're going to see these symptoms manifest. So you can think of them as what you were probably taught in school is that the mitochondria are energy bunnies. They just pump out ATP. They're kind of robotic. And so we now know that the mitochondria, yes, they do make ATP. Whether or not that's actually the energy currency of the cell is kind of up for debate at this stage. But they do know that they make energy. And when they are not working properly and we're not making enough energy, that is when we end up with disease.
Okay, and what about cancer? I thought cancer is also a form of mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah, cancer would fall under that same umbrella. So when the mitochondria shift metabolically, so they're no longer performing oxidative phosphorylation or the TCA cycle, you know a lot, Jennifer, about redox, and I won't go into that. But when the allostatic load I'm sure everybody understands what allostatic load is. All of the stressors that we're exposed to, environmental toxins, chemicals in our water, poor food choices, stress, whether that's psychological stress, light stress, noise stress. When the load of all of those stressors exceeds the cell's capacity to maintain homeostasis with all those stressors, the metabolic functions of the cell are going to shift. And that would be an example of when cancer manifests. That would be a manifestation of that.
And what are just some basic symptoms or signs before they get to the stage of cancer or heart failure or something like that? But what are some of the earlier signs that someone might be starting to have mitochondrial dysfunction?
So, you know what's really interesting about that, Dr. Engels, is that when you look at Dr. Doug Wallace's work, so Dr. Doug Wallace is one of the leaders in mitochondrial research, and I would say he probably is the leader in the world. He has found that as we age, we accumulate what's called mitochondrial heteroplasmy. And heteroplasmy means they're basically mutations within your mitochondrial DNA. So your mitochondria have DNA, just like you have nuclear DNA, our mitochondria have DNA that are unique to the mitochondria. And when we develop mutations within the mitochondrial DNA, that is when we get to a certain threshold, that's when we are going to get diagnosed with a disease, or symptoms are going to manifest first, and then we're going to get diagnosed with the disease. So his work shows that you need to have about 70% is the threshold. So you have to have 70% dysfunctional mutated mitochondria in order for symptoms to even arise. And then at the 80% threshold, that's when you would have a disease that you would get diagnosed with. So we have to have an enormous amount of mutated dysfunctional mitochondria in order for you to even have symptoms manifest. And so I use this example a lot, but you hear a lot of people say, speaking of cancer, you hear a lot of people say, I had a friend that was perfectly healthy and then they got diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
And that's the story as to why you could be moving through the world feeling perfectly fine, not having a lot of symptoms at all. But you're sitting at, say, 68 or 69% heteroplasmy. And then you get to that 70% threshold, and that's when the symptoms are going to surface. So your body has an incredible way of being able to manage and maintain coherence despite massive amounts of dysfunction that are going on within the cell. And that's the beautiful intelligence that you are. But does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, my other question is, what would those symptoms look like? Would it be just fatigue or depression? Are there some typical symptoms as a red flag that the mitochondria are failing, or does it show up differently in everyone?
So it's going to be any symptom, right? That's going to give us an indication that there's something going on under the hood. So depression, fatigue, brain fog, but there's a lot of GI symptoms that would fall under that category too. Those GI symptoms or gut symptoms, you may be more familiar with that, are still stemming from mitochondrial dysfunction at the core. So
Right.
whether that's inability to digest and assimilate fats, or you have a fatty meal and you feel really, really bloated, or you're getting heartburn when you have, some lamb chops, those are all indicating that there are issues going on underneath the hood. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, that's a really classic example of that mitochondrial dysfunction or damage has now got to that threshold or exceeded that threshold.
Right. Okay. And then, um, so what lifestyle factors impact mitochondria? Like, for example, diet, exercise, EMF exposure, sleep. I mean, I know they all do, but can you kind of touch a little bit on lifestyle factors and things we could do to make better choices?
Yeah, well, I think the number one, not I think, I know that the number one factor that is regulating mitochondrial function is your light environment, your circadian biology or your circadian health. So, for instance, your every one of those 37 trillion cells that I just mentioned and those 200 different cell types, in every single one of your cell, every single second, there's about 100,000 and some people estimate up to a million biophysical reactions that are taking place every single second. So this is where we can throw out the idea that biochemistry exists because that would be impossible. Chemical reactions don't happen that quickly. And so that's where we know that these are biophysical reactions. Physics is now married to biochemistry in order for that to be our reality. And every single thing that's taking place within your cell is taking place at the specific, the perfect time when your body knows what time it is. So as soon as your cells don't know what time it is, you lose the ability to, you lose control of those timing mechanisms. And this is where, and Dr. Engels knows a lot about this from our mentorship program, but this is where you cannot out supplement or out sleep or out diet or out exercise a bad light environment because you are, when you break it down, a body of water that is regulated by light. And so the very first and most important thing to do is to make sure that you are getting morning light first thing in the morning before you get exposed to any other light. And that is watching the sunrise. So you're getting outside first thing for the sunrise and spending as much time outside as you can in the morning so that you're bathing in these wavelengths of light that are nutrients for your mitochondria. So at sunrise, as an example, we have lots of red and infrared light. Those are essential nutrients for your mitochondria. Those are essential nutrients to allow your cells to be hydrated. They expand the intracellular water through this is Dr. Jerry Pollack's work. I won't get into that too much, but that sunrise in the morning is letting that light comes in your eyes and through your skin, but mainly through your eyes is where that light is going to get transmitted into electrical signals. Those electrical signals are going to go directly to your suprachiasmatic nucleus. And your suprachiasmatic nucleus is your brain's master clock. The suprachiasmatic nucleus then sends light signals to every one of your 37 trillion cells to let your cells know what time it is. So if you are getting up in the morning and you're looking at your cell phone, or you're turning on an LED light in your bathroom or in your bedroom or in your kitchen, you have just completely scrambled all of your timing mechanisms. And that's where we see this kind of this is the catalyst to mitochondrial dysfunction, because as soon as your mitochondria don't know what time it is, they are going to sense danger, and that's going to shift their metabolic functions. So you want to remember that for optimal health and optimal longevity, your light environment is number one, and that's harder to do today than ever because we are Most people are very addicted. They're looking at their phone all the time. They're on their computers. They're living under LED lights. They're not getting outside and getting sunlight. They're not blocking blue light at night. So they're watching TV right before bed and then they're going to bed. So they've been telling their brain that's going to tell all of their cells that it's the middle of the day when it's 10 o'clock. So that's a big deal. That's number one. And Dr. Engels knows a lot about that and will continue to learn a lot about that to teach you so that you know how to make sure that you're optimizing your circadian biology so your cells know what to do. And then, of course, all the things that you mentioned. We want to make sure that most people are consuming a diet that is it's hyper processed. It's food that no human being should be consuming. And I always say that's anything that's in a package, anything that's in a box, anything in a bag. We don't want to be consuming anything that's been processed. We want to be eating whole, real food, and whole, real food is really, it's also light information. It contains a biophotonic barcode that is signaling to our mitochondria to let us know what season we're in and where we're located. And all of those things are really important because, again, your mitochondria are not energy factories. They are sentient little organelles that are always sensing the environment, both the internal environment and your external environment. And of course, movement is critical. You were designed to move. I'm not the person to talk to you about going to the gym and doing an exercise program. I actually I discourage people from doing that because I don't want you spending more time under artificial lights in a gym attached to a machine that's plugged into a 60 hertz electrical system with 100 other people that are on their cell phones. I want you to get outside and move your body and be in the sunlight or the natural light, but it doesn't matter what season is. And I want you connected to the earth. So, but movement is key. We were designed to move. Your lymphatic system needs you to be moving in order for it to be flowing. And there are a lot of people that believe that it is the activation of the lymphatic system that is such a powerful signal of coherence that that's actually what can stimulate healing within the human body. And making sure that you're eliminating toxins to the very best of your ability. So you're not using things in plastic. And, you know, there's lots of little things that we can clean up. Tea bags have been really shown to be incredibly contaminated with micro and nanoplastics when you put that tea bag in hot water. So if you're drinking tea, you're drinking trillions of particles of micro and nanoplastics that are, you know, going to damage your
What
mitochondria.
about the like more paper type tea bags that aren't plastic? There's
They're
some that
all they're all made from plastic.
Mhm.
Yeah, you want to really there's traditional medicinals is the one brand that I know that is has clean tea bags, but not even completely clean because if you put the whole tea bag in, they use a plastic seal. So if you would have to keep the top of the tea bag out of the water. So it's always better to use, you know, loose leaf tea, organically grown, and glyphosate, which is sprayed on all of our crops now that are not organically grown, is a mitochondrial toxin. So we're living in a really, I say this all the time, that we've weaponized our environment against us. And so in order for us to really protect our mitochondria and therefore protect our health, because the health of our mitochondria are determining our health, we have to really prioritize living differently and living intentionally and living in a way that we are providing as many safety signals as possible to our mitochondria. So the toxins is a big piece. Sleep is a big piece. Making sure that your bedroom is completely and totally dark at night. That's huge. You want to make sure that you can't even see your hand in front of your face at night because that darkness is a signal. And that is helping to facilitate restoring on a cellular level. So there's lots of things that we
Right.
need to do and lots of things that we need to avoid to make sure that we are optimally supporting those amazing mitochondria.
And can you explain the glasses you're wearing and why you wear special glasses during the day and then different ones at night?
Yeah, so I don't wear these glasses during the day because I'm outside all day. So I want naked eyes when I'm outside. But when I'm indoors on a computer, I am always wearing blue light blocking glasses to just protect my eyes, protect my brain from the blue light that's radiating off the screen that is going to give my brain signals that it is a different time than it actually is. And that's coming from, we have these melanopsin receptors are these opsins in the retina that are detecting blue light. And that's primarily how you are regulating your circadian rhythm. It's the blue light that's tickling the melanopsin receptor that is letting your brain know that it's the middle of the day. And so whenever we're looking at a computer, for me, it's almost 6 o'clock. And I don't want to tell my brain that it's noon when it's almost 6 o'clock. So I
Right.
protect my eyes from that. And then at night, a couple hours before I go to bed, I put on a pair of red lens glasses, and that the red lenses block out all of the blue, all of the green, and really dim the environment so that so I can give my brain the signal that it's nighttime so that I can release melatonin.
Right. Okay. And then there's things you can do on your phone, like put that color filter on there. And even on your computer, there's the iris. Like, can you talk about those kind of things?
Yeah, so on your phone, if you go to and maybe you can write this out for people if you go back and listen to the recording. So if you have an iPhone, you just go into settings and you go into accessibility, and then you go into display and text size. And then you hit color filters and you turn the color filters on. Once you do that, you're going to get to a page that has a bunch of the different crayons, and you can select the red green filter. It's the top one that is going to turn your phone completely red. Once you press, so you're going to select that filter, and then you're going to press color tint, and you're going to move the line all the way over to the right-hand side, both of them over to the right-hand side. And that's going to change your phone screen to a red tinge. And I actually never usually have my phone with me. It's off. My phone is never on, but you can see that it's a red, you can't really see my phone. It's
Yeah.
just very, very dim, kind of pinkish, and I keep it that way all the time.
Uh,
Um, and I use it for maybe between 5 and 10 minutes a day, max.
right, right. And you keep your Bluetooth off during the day and really
My
try
phone
to
is,
minimize EMF.
yeah, my phone is completely off during the day. I truly have it off 99% of the time. And even when I do use it, Dr. Engels, I have it plugged in to an Ethernet cord. I'm not using it. I'm not turning my phone on.
Okay.
The only time it gets turned on is if I have a code that's sent to me or something that I have to get through text
Right,
message.
right.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of patients ask me about NAD therapy, and is that a way to help your mitochondria, or what are your thoughts on taking NAD either IV or orally or other different ways?
Well, in a very nice way, I will say it's a big fat marketing scam. So
Uh-huh.
it's marketed as kind of a longevity tool and some kind of miracle fuel, but the very inconvenient truth is that your body doesn't even have receptors. You don't have receptors for NAD on the cell membrane. So when you take NAD, a supplement, whether that's intravenously or supplements, it's going to get broken down into the precursors. And so that's nicotinamide and nicotinic acid before it can actually get reassembled inside your cell. So if you're and I would say the majority of people living on the planet today are going to have a redox environment or a mitochondrial function that is compromised. So that means that so we have NAD and NADH ratios, and it's NAD gets reduced to NADH. NADH is what is going to deliver electrons to your electron transport chain so that you can make energy. And when that ratio gets skewed, your mitochondria are under a threat. They sense that as a threat. And if your membrane potential is low, so again, you don't have that strong voltage, that strong charge that we need, you are not going to be able to recycle those precursors back into usable NADH. So what happens instead of this? You actually end up backloading your system with intermediates that your body can't use. And that can increase methylation burden, that can increase oxidative stress, that creates cellular confusion. So nothing about NAD therapy is fixing mitochondrial dysfunction. You are flooding a broken circuit potentially with more input. And while you're
Mhm.
ignoring that root terrain problem that caused the deficit in the first place. So you are never going to be able to repair mitochondria by taking something exogenously, with the exception of we'll talk about the lipids. The lipids are different; they're fats that are essential. But when you think of these supplements, that's not the way that your body works. It is perfectly in tuned and coherent and doing everything exactly the way it should be done. And when you throw things at it, it's going to have to deal with that assault, which can be catastrophic for some people. And some people that have really good mitochondrial function are maybe able to tolerate some of that in low doses without any problems long term.
Okay. All right. How does things like chronic stress affect mitochondrial performance?
So chronic, this is if you're interested in looking into the work of Dr. Martin Picard. He actually studies this. I would say he's the lead researcher around psychological stress and mitochondrial dysfunction. So it disrupts mitochondrial function at every level. So it's starting with how the cell perceives safety. So when you are chronically under stress, your body is going to shift into a sympathetic state and it stays there. It's a sustained sympathetic state. And that is going to cause an elevation of cortisol and catecholamines. And this alters mitochondrial signaling. It suppresses oxidative phosphorylation, which is what makes energy, which makes metabolic water and makes ATP. And it increases reactive oxygen species. Mitochondrial signaling suppresses energy production. And the stress-driven state leads to fragmented mitochondria. It leads to a reduced ATP output and it shifts the cell towards glycolysis. So this is what you were talking about earlier when we were talking about cancer. This is what the mitochondria do this in cancer states. It shifts metabolism towards glycolysis, shuts down oxidative phosphorylation because there's too much stress, there's too much danger. So the priority is taken away from energy production and towards survival. So, and this takes place even when oxygen is available. So your whole redox balance becomes distorted. Your mitochondrial DNA repair slows, so you can't actually repair any mitochondrial DNA damage. And the cell can even enter this very, very deep energy conserving mode, defense mode called the cell danger response. And that almost always happens over time. And over time, this not only reduces energy production, but it's also going to impair your mitochondria's ability to regulate your immune function, hormone production and synthesis, neurotransmitters. So it leaves the system inflamed, depleted, and less able to recover. So it's not just chronic stress doesn't just deplete people emotionally, it really reprograms your core bioenergetics.
So, how about testing? Like, what is the best way to test if someone's mitochondria is working or not working, or what their fatty acid levels look like?
So I don't know of a test that actually tests mitochondrial function. I'm sure that there will be tests that come out at some stage and probably soon. Clinically, we were running a test out of Germany called the IGL, and that was testing mitochondrial function. There were a number of different panels that were tested to kind of give you an idea, like membrane voltage, ATP levels, phospholipid levels on a mitochondrial level. But the owner of that lab, the scientist passed away suddenly last summer, and the lab has not been able to recover. So we don't have that test anymore. So we don't, as of my understanding, we don't have a test that we can lean into using, but we can use the fatty acid test to get an idea around, do we have the essential nutrients that are required to support the mitochondrial membranes? Because if we don't have support if the mitochondrial membrane is broken down and we don't have those phospholipids and those essential fatty acids to repair the membrane, then we're going to remain in that dysfunctional state. And so that's my favorite test to use, just to because it's you're just giving the body exactly what the cells need to do the work that they were designed to do. You're not forcing healing, you're not pushing, you're not prodding, you're just replenishing, you're repleting, and then letting the body do its work.
Okay. Um, so so what supplements like would you use or products like would you use Body Bio PC or explain a little bit about what PC is and how that would help?
Yeah, so the body biophospholipid complex is the PC, and it's a blend of 4 different phospholipids that are required to support the outer and the inner membrane of every one of our cells. So I mentioned at the beginning that we have 37 trillion cells and we have 200 different cell types, and we have over 500 trillion mitochondria. And all of those different cells and all of those different cell types, they all have these biological membranes. And those biological membranes are made of phospholipids primarily. And so when we are in a situation where we are under assaults, chronic assaults, like we all are, we live in this environment where we're chronically getting assaulted by environmental toxins. We're living in a soup of non-native EMFs. And all of those things are going to damage the cell membrane, damage the mitochondrial membrane. Mold is a big one. There's a lot of people that are probably familiar with mold illness. Well, those mycotoxins damage the membrane. And so people that stay sick from mold long term, even after they've removed themselves from that environment and their cells are still perceiving that it's not safe to proceed with normal metabolic functions, I've seen clinically the incredible healing power of just delivering these phospholipids so that we can go in and replace the damaged parts of the membrane with these healthy, functional phospholipids. And so the PC has phosphatidylcholine as the main phospholipid, phosphatidylethanolamine, phosphatidylinositol, and phosphatidylserine. So there's 4. And PC is found on the outer membrane of every one of your cells. And then the other 3 phospholipids are found in the inner membrane. Now, your mitochondria also have 2 membranes. They have an outer membrane that's rich in phosphatidylcholine and an inner membrane that's rich in phosphatidylethanolamine. Now, phosphatidylethylamine, these are big words. You don't need to remember these words.
Yeah.
But the phosphatidylethylamine, or you can call it PE, that's found on the inner mitochondrial membrane. So that is where oxidative phosphorylation occurs. That is where you make energy. That's where you make metabolic water. That's where those electrons are tunneling through. So if you have a breakdown on that membrane, you're not going to be able to make energy well. You're not going to be able to support those electrons moving through those protein complexes. You're not going to have hydrated cells because you're not going to be able to make metabolic water. So they are so important. And I have said many, many times that if there's one thing that I would recommend people taking, and I don't recommend a lot of supplements, I would say you want to take the PC, especially just considering the environment that we're in today where we're so assaulted. For the body to keep up with those demands, I think it would be nearly impossible.
Okay. And then I know Body Bio is a great company. They have some other products that I wanted you to talk about, the one that's called Balance Oil.
So the balance oil is a blend of our 2 essential fatty acids. So we have 2 essential fatty acids that are essential nutrients that are fatty acids. So your body can't make them. And if we don't get adequate amounts of those fatty acids and we don't get them in the optimal ratios, then we are going to be severely compromised on a cellular level. We're going to be compromised head to toe because the importance of these fatty acids cannot be overstated. So the balance oil provides you with linoleic and alpha-linolenic acid. So those are 2 essential fatty acids. The alpha-linolenic acid is the plant-based form of the omega-3, and linoleic acid is the omega-6. It's in a 4-to-1 ratio, which is our perfect ratio. And in functional, pure, raw form. So the balance oil is cold pressed. There's no hexane, there's no solvents, there's no bleaches, there's no deodorizers. So it's very different than a seed oil that you have probably been told is inflammatory and you should avoid it. And you should avoid those oils. They're toxic to your cells. But the Body Balance oil is cold pressed and it's not processed in the same way. So you're nourishing your body with these essential nutrients that it needs to build healthy cell membranes, to support the mitochondria. Linoleic acid is the main fatty acid that's found within the cardiolipin. That's the phospholipid bilayer that sits on top of your phosphatidylethanolamine membrane. And they act as signaling molecules as well. So they make prostaglandins and thromboxans, and they are both inflammatory and anti-inflammatory on the omega-6 side, so that we can have a healthy immune response when we consume these fatty acids. And on the omega-3 side, many people are familiar with omega-3s and the importance of them, but omega-6s are not any less important than the omega-3s. They just seem to have a very bad name. So that's the balance oil. It's a blend of these essential fatty acids.
And one thing that people get confused about on that one is that it comes from safflower oil. Is that one of the ingredients? And we've been taught that that's a bad seed oil. So can you explain? I know you already kind of said it, but why this product is not the same as consuming safflower oil that's in a package or processed food?
Yeah, so it's just the way that it's processed is so different. So these seed oils in the food industry are industrial food byproducts. And when you extract these oils from a seed industrially, they're using chemical solvents, they're using bleaches, they're using deodorizers, they're using extremely high temperatures. So the fatty acid chain in these essential fatty acids have double carbon bonds that make them susceptible to oxidation. So you basically are taking this very delicate fatty acid and you are oxidizing it. And when you consume an oxidized oil, it's toxic for your cells. They contain aldehydes, which are mitochondrial toxins that facilitate lipid peroxidation, which is like the worst kind of domino effect when it comes to membrane damaging those lipids. And so those are not for human consumption. So you want to avoid any safflower, any sunflower, any soy, corn, cottonseed, canola, rapeseed oil, rice bran oil, grapeseed oil, avocado oil. That's not a polyunsaturated fatty acid, that's a mono, but it's still processed in the same way. The Body Balance oil is not processed in that way. It's just a pure cold pressed oil, cold extracted, no hexane, no solvents, no bleaches, nothing.
Okay. And then what about the remineralize body bio product? Can you tell?
The remineralize is a mineral formula. So it's a trace, it has both macro and trace minerals, and it's derived from the saltwater ponds in Utah. And so there's over 70 different trace minerals in that formula, along with macro minerals like potassium, sodium, chloride, magnesium. And the minerals are absolutely crucial to your cellular health, to making sure that you can maintain and build that exclusion zone water, to stabilize protein complexes. I mean, ATP is essential for stabilizing, or magnesium is essential for stabilizing ATP and is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions. So these minerals are so key, and they're often actually forgotten about when we're focusing on helping to support patients' healing on a cellular level. I know so many practitioners that don't even recommend minerals at all, and so they're a very important equation when it comes to supporting on a cellular level.
Okay. And then what about the Elite product for electrolytes?
And the Elite is an electrolyte formula. So it's just sodium, potassium, and magnesium. And it does have higher amounts of potassium than sodium. And it's designed to help to support getting water into the cell, the water that you drink. And it's also providing the electrolytes that you need to support the voltage of your membrane. So same kind of ideas as I just mentioned with the remineralize. It's just higher concentration of just 3 of those electrolytes and not all those trace minerals.
So could you take both of them or would that be overkill?
No, I think taking both of them is a good idea. Yeah. And again, it's going to largely depend on the individual, their activity level, how much they're sweating, how much water they're drinking, because we want to be careful too about not overhydrating because that can actually deplete a lot of our minerals, and lead to other consequences as well. So there's a lot of variables that you would want to look at, but adding in the Elite to a glass of water that has some remineralize is perfect. Yeah, you're just getting more of those electrolytes and giving that water a charge.
Okay. I just had one last question. How do things like intermittent fasting or cold plunge or, sauna and then getting into cryotherapy, how do those kind of things help or hurt the mitochondria?
So intermittent fasting, I'll start with that one. I don't know what your definition of intermittent fasting is. I encourage people to do intermittent fasting the opposite way that most people recommend it. So I never recommend skipping breakfast. Breakfast is, in my opinion, the most important time to be eating to signal to leptin and to set your circadian rhythm. And when we miss that meal and we're not eating the appropriate macronutrients at that meal, like good amounts of protein, we can really skew with that circadian system and skew with leptin, which is our master energy regulator in the body. So if you are going to engage in if you want to call it intermittent fasting or just make eating earlier in the day, I prefer to just encourage people to eat earlier in the day because that's when we have the most metabolic fire. We have the best ability to digest and assimilate nutrients. We are going to get the most from our food earlier on in the day because as the day moves on, like I talked about earlier with these timing mechanisms, later in the day is not when your body wants to be digesting food. That's when it's preparing for rest and recovery and autophagy and getting into ketosis. And so ideally you would want to skip dinner if you are going to intermittent fast and eat a good solid breakfast and lunch. Now, depending on the individual, is going to kind of determine uh, the benefits and potentially that being a stressor. So if somebody is underweight, they're undernourished, they have micronutrient deficiencies, I do not recommend skipping meals and doing extended fasting. If someone has weight to lose, if somebody is overnourished, they're not calorie restricting, they're not giving their cells danger signals because they're not consuming enough food and signaling to the cell that it's in a famine, then I think it's a great idea to be implementing a couple days a week where you stop eating at 2 o'clock and leave
Mhm.
yourself with a really nice, 16 or 18-hour fast. And I do that regularly, 2 or 3 times a week. I just have my last meal at 2 or 2:30 and then have
Mhm.
breakfast in the morning.
Okay. All right. And then now we've got some questions in the chat, so I wanted to go to those. Um, so someone asked if you're at work when the sun rises, what should you do? Is there another option or how can they work around that?
Yeah, so I would just say that you want to make sure that you're protecting your eyes from any artificial light prior to the sunrise, and you want to during the day too. But if you can get a pair of red lens glasses or orange glasses to wear in the morning, so that you're not getting exposed to any artificial light. That's what I would recommend doing. And then I would encourage you to get out for sunrise. So just to let your work know that I don't know where you live, the sunrise is typically quite early now if you're at a higher latitude. But if you need to get out by, 6:30 or 7 o'clock, to see the sunrise that you just asked for, a 5 or 10 minute break, you can get out there, take off your glasses, and get that very healing light in your eyes. And then when you go back inside, you'd want to get a pair of yellow kind of tinted glasses. There's a number of different companies, and I can share those with Dr. Engels. If you're inside all day, these are probably going to be too dark for you, but there's another company that makes some blue light blocking glasses that is going to be protective there, or those glasses are going to be protective to your circadian rhythm. And then you want to get out as much as you can during the day.
Okay. And then someone asked, what about fractionated coconut oil?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's highly processed, highly processed. So I don't recommend that at all. If you're I'm not a huge fan of coconut oil, unless you're living in the tropics, but if you are using it, you want to make sure that you're getting uh, pure raw coconut oil, and using it, or stone ground, coconut butter, but you don't want to use fractionated. Those are all very highly processed.
Okay, and if you don't recommend avocado oil to cook with, what kind of fats or oils do you cook with?
So you never want to cook with an oil. You would want to use a saturated fat for cooking. So ghee or tallow would be what I would recommend for cooking.
Mhm.
And just making sure that the temperature, you're cooking at quite a low temperature. You want to keep the temperature low.
Okay. And then someone asked about, can body bio PC be given to kids for eczema?
Body Bio PC, there it's just lipids, so it's safe for kids and adults. I have had all of my nieces and nephews take the Body Bio PC since they were able to eat food, so at 6 months old.
Okay.
So yes, in terms of eczema, you want to look into the sunlight first and foremost. Sunlight. Get the child outside without clothes on. And then also the Body Bio EPO, the evening primrose oil. I would strongly suggest that you use that too, because that's going to help to support inflammation, and that goes directly into what are called PGE1 prostaglandins, which are your most potent anti-inflammatory prostaglandins in your body. And it's very strongly correlated. Low levels of that fatty acid are very strongly correlated with eczema.
Okay. And then what about sunscreen when you're outside? Do you
Uh,
use sunscreen?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. You think about this logic. You are being recommended by dermatologists and whoever else to bake petrochemicals into your skin, and they call that protective from skin cancer. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And even if you're using a natural sunscreen, you are still creating an alien sun. You're blocking out certain wavelengths of light, and you are not blocking out other wavelengths of light. So you evolved to be in the sun. There's no question about that. The sun is what gives life to the entire planet. If you hide from the sun, it's a recipe for disease. And there's plenty of studies showing that the more time people spend in the sun, the longer their health span, the less neurodegenerative disease, the less cardiovascular disease, the list goes on and on. So yes, you want to make sure that you are, not going out there and burning like a lobster. You're watching the sunrise. You're allowing your body to adapt to the higher, stronger solar yield. But you want to get outside and you want to get as much of your skin exposed as possible.
Okay. So even the zinc-based sunblock is bad?
It's not that the zinc-based ones that are pure zinc oxide are like if you're going to be out all day and you don't have a hat and you need to put something on your nose, after a few hours, that would be my top recommendation for sure. But I don't recommend putting any of those things on your skin. I recommend putting on some clothes or putting on a hat if you need to, and not, putting any of those things on your skin.
Okay. And then how much water is too much? She's been told to drink 100 ounces a day.
So yeah, see, these are like arbitrary recommendations. So I don't know who told you that. And you may need to drink that much water. I don't, and the quality of the water that you drink is I would say more important than the amount of water that you're drinking. And so, and ultimately, you want your mitochondria making metabolic water for you so that they're hydrating the cell. Uh, so I'm not the best person to talk to about this because I drink a lot of water. I probably drink too much water. But an arbitrary recommendation, like drink half your body weight in ounces, is ridiculous. I mean, completely depends on the environment that you're in. If you're on an airplane, you want to be drinking water, like a liter of water every hour that you're on that plane because you're in this metal tube that's completely dehydrating you. If you're outside in the sun and you're sweating all day and it's a hot day, you want to make sure that you're hydrating. Uh, Depends on your height, your weight, your activity level. There's lots of variables that go into that.
Okay. And then our body bio PC and balance oil help the person with familial hypercholesterolemia and lipoprotein A with other lifestyle changes.
So yeah, the Body Bio PC and the Balance Oil these are essential lipids. So it doesn't matter your, genetic predisposition. We all have cells, we all have membranes, and we all have mitochondria that need to be supported. Um, PC does regulate the cholesterol feedback loop. So PC is required when when you think about your liver making cholesterol, when you don't have enough phospholipids or fatty acids to support a membrane, your liver is going to upregulate cholesterol production to send cholesterol to the membrane to patch damage and to protect the cell. When you have adequate amounts of PC, then your body can take a breath and it doesn't need to be sending out so much cholesterol to the membrane. And so that's the way that it kind of regulates that feedback system. And so low levels of PC are correlated with higher levels of cholesterol. And once you support your body with these phospholipids, you can see kind of cholesterol come to a healthy range. When it comes to hypercholesterolemia, I am not familiar. I know a little bit about this condition. And I know that it changes things a little bit. So I would talk to your doctor about that. But I've never seen PC or balance oil raise cholesterol higher. They are supportive.
Thanks, Justine. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Next month, our webinar, we're going to have Ashley, one of my new virtual health coaches, is going to be giving a webinar on GLP-1s, and she's going to talk a lot about that. So I hope you guys can join, and thank you so much and have a good night.